It always starts the same way. A glance across the room, charged with electricity. A laugh too loud, a touch too deliberate. You feel the pull, don't you? That primal urge to close the distance, to conquer, to claim. She's willing, eager even. No games, no resistance, no chase. You tell yourself this is what you wanted. A woman who doesn't make you work, who gives freely, who sees you. But later, after the heat fades, after the sheets cool, something shifts. The respect you thought you'd feel curdles into indifference. The thrill of conquest becomes the weight of regret, and you wonder, why does this keep happening? Carl Jung, the man who dissected the human psyche like a surgeon, would have named this phenomenon not as love, not as lust, but as projection, the silent thief of authenticity. Jung spent his life mapping the unconscious, the shadowy realm where our deepest fears and unmet desires puppeteer our choices. And here's what he uncovered. When intimacy happens too fast, it's rarely about connection. It's about two people using each other as blank screens to project their unresolved fantasies. But let's cut through the noise. This isn't about shaming men or vilifying women. This is about the psychological trap both genders fall into when they confuse urgency with intimacy, access with respect. You think you've won when she says yes without hesitation. No dates, no courtship, no proving your worth. But Jung would have warned you, the faster she gives herself, the faster you'll devalue her. Not because she's easy, but because the human mind is wired to equate effort with meaning. When you skip the struggle, the tension, the uncertainty, the earned vulnerability, you bypass the very process that builds respect. Jung called this the anima, the inner feminine force in men that craves mystery, challenge, and the sacred. When a man's anima is immature, he confuses possession for power, immediacy for worth. He chases the rush of the hunt, but feels nothing when the prey surrenders. Why? Because the anima doesn't want the trophy. It wants the transformation that comes from the chase. And women, this is where the tragedy deepens. Many of you have been taught that sexual liberation is empowerment, that saying yes is strength. But Jung would have challenged this. If you offer your body before a man has glimpsed your soul, you become a mirror for his emptiness, not a catalyst for his growth. He'll use you to numb his insecurities, not to face them. Let's name the unspoken contract. I give you access, you give me validation. It's a trade, not a bond. And like all transactions, it leaves both parties emptier than before. Jung wrote extensively about the shadow, the parts of ourselves we disown, suppress, or deem unacceptable. When men rush into physical intimacy, they're often fleeing their shadow, the fear of inadequacy, the terror of emotional exposure, the shame of needing more than sex to feel alive. They use a woman's body as a temporary salve, a distraction from the work they refuse to do. And women? Your shadow whispers lies. If I withhold, I'll lose him. If I demand more, I'll be alone. So you surrender, mistaking compliance for connection. But here's the truth Jung unearthed. A man who hasn't faced his shadow cannot respect yours. He'll resent you for reflecting the parts of himself he's too cowardly to confront. Mystery isn't a game, it's the oxygen of desire. Jung understood that the human soul thrives on the unknown, the unspoken, the not yet. When you lay everything bare too quickly, you don't become intimate, you become predictable, and predictability is the graveyard of respect. Think of the anima again, the inner feminine that draws men toward what they cannot fully grasp. When a woman reveals her body but cloaks her depth, she reduces herself to a thing, not a mystery. And men, when you prioritize physical access over emotional curiosity, you signal that her value lies in her utility, not her humanity. Jung warned of the collective unconscious, the shared myths and archetypes that shape our behavior. One of these is the virgin-whore dichotomy, a toxic split in the male psyche that labels women as either untouchable ideals or disposable objects. When intimacy happens without context, without earned trust, Men, often unconsciously, lump women into the latter category, not out of malice, but out of psychological laziness. Now, women, this is where your own shadow comes knocking. Jung's concept of the animus, the inner masculine, explains why so many of you rush into beds with men who've done nothing to earn your trust. An immature animus screams, prove your worth through his desire. If he wants you, you matter. But here's the brutal truth. A man who hasn't worked to know you won't work to keep you. By conflating sex with validation, you feed the very system that reduces you to a conquest. Jung called this psychological possession, when the animus hijacks a woman's logic, convincing her that quick intimacy is empowerment, when in reality, it's a surrender of power. So how do we break this cycle? Jung's answer was individuation, the grueling process of becoming whole, of integrating your shadow anima and animus into a conscious self. For men, stop using sex as a substitute for self-worth. The bed isn't a courtroom where you're judged as a man. Confront your anima. What are you really seeking in these encounters? Approval? Distraction? Escape? Respect isn't given, it's earned, and you can't earn it from her until you've earned it from yourself. For women, your body isn't currency. If he hasn't invested in your mind, don't auction your flesh. Reclaim your animus. Let your inner masculine demand more than fleeting attention. Mystery isn't manipulation, it's self-respect. Let him unravel you layer by layer, or let him walk. Jung didn't mince words. We disrespect in others what we despise in ourselves. Men who lose respect for women after fast intimacy are really raging against their own emptiness, their inability to find meaning beyond the physical. And women who enable this dynamic are fleeing their own fear of being truly seen. This isn't about morality, it's about consciousness. When you sleep with someone too fast, you're not breaking rules, you're avoiding the terrifying work of building something real. You're handing over your body to skip the vulnerability of handing over your soul. A man who's done the work, who's faced his shadow, integrated his anima, and stopped seeking validation through conquest, doesn't lose respect for women. Why? Because he no longer uses them as mirrors. He doesn't need to. His respect for himself is so unshakable that it naturally extends to others. This man waits, not out of strategy but out of self-respect. He understands that sex without context is a hollow high, a temporary escape from the lifelong journey of becoming. He wants more than a body. He wants a partner who's done her own work. And women, when you stop letting men pay for your worth with attention, something shifts. You radiate a quiet power that terrifies immature men and magnetizes those who've done their work. You realize, the right man won't fear your boundaries, he'll respect them. The right man isn't intimidated by your mystery, he's intrigued by it. Jung wrote that the meeting of two whole individuals is alchemy. It's rare, explosive, and nothing like the transactional dances most settle for. So here's your crossroads. Keep playing the game, swiping, seducing, scoring, and watch respect evaporate like steam. Or do the Jungian work. Sit with your emptiness. Face your shadows. Demand depth, not dopamine hits. It'll hurt. You'll feel alone. You'll watch others pair up while you're still digging through your psyche. But as Jung promised, wholeness isn't found in another's arms. It's forged in the fire of your own solitude. But what if the pain isn't the enemy? What if the loneliness isn't a sign you're failing, but proof you're finally being honest with yourself? Jung didn't just study the mind. He studied alchemy. Not the medieval pseudoscience of turning lead into gold, but the psychic alchemy of turning pain into purpose, chaos into clarity, fragmentation into wholeness. He called the first stage of this process nigredo, the blackening. It's the phase where everything you've avoided rises to the surface. Your shame, your fears, your unmet needs, your buried rage. It feels like death because it is death, the death of the false self, the persona you built to survive in a world that rewards lies. When you sit in that solitude, when you refuse to numb yourself with cheap validation or another warm body, you're entering Nigredo. The men scrolling through dating apps at 2 a.m., the women texting exes just to feel wanted. They're all fleeing this stage. They'd rather drown in distraction than face the rot festering in their souls. But here's what Jung knew. You cannot skip the decay. The breakdown is the breakthrough. That voice whispering, "You're unlovable," isn't your enemy. It's your guide. It's showing you where the work begins. Modern dating sells you a fantasy that loneliness can be cured by swiping right, that emptiness can be filled by another person's attention. But Jung called this psychic vampirism, the act of using others to regulate your self-worth. When you sleep with someone too fast, you're not connecting, you're consuming. You're treating another human being as a drug to mute your inner chaos. Think of the last time you hooked up with someone just to feel less alone. Recall the hollowness afterward, the way their absence felt heavier than their presence. That's not chemistry, that's withdrawal. Jung warned that when we use others as painkillers, we become addicts, not lovers. The man who brags about his body count isn't powerful. He's a junkie, chasing a fading high. The woman who confuses male attention with self-worth isn't liberated. She's a prisoner, bartering her body for crumbs of validation. Jung identified a pattern in myths across cultures. The healer who must first be wounded. Chiron, the Greek centaur who could cure others but not himself. The shaman who survives a near-death experience to gain wisdom. This isn't poetic metaphor, it's psychological law. Your deepest wounds hold the blueprint for your strength, but only if you stop running from them. For men, that ache you feel after meaningless sex, the hollowness, the guilt, isn't guilt over using her, it's guilt over using yourself. You've reduced your body to a machine and your soul to a spectator. For women, the resentment you feel when he ghosts after intimacy isn't anger at him, it's anger at yourself for believing, yet again, that access to your body would translate to access to his heart. Jung's solution: let the wound speak. Stop pathologizing your pain as neediness or drama. Your loneliness is a signal, not a defect. It's telling you to stop outsourcing your worth to strangers' beds and start mining the riches buried in your own psyche. We're all complicit in the lie. Social media, porn, dating apps, they've turned intimacy into a commodity, a transaction stripped of context. But Jung warned that when a culture collectively represses its shadow, it becomes possessed by it. Look around. No strings attached is the modern mantra, but the strings are everywhere. Insecure men tying their masculinity to conquests, anxious women tying their value to desirability, both genders scrolling through endless options yet feeling emptier than ever. Hookup culture isn't liberation, it's spiritual bypassing. It's a way to avoid the vulnerability of true intimacy by drowning in sensation. But the body keeps score. Men develop performance anxiety, ED, or a numbed-out detachment. Women develop hypervigilance, resentment, or a performative, cool girl persona. These aren't sexual issues, they're soul issues. The body is screaming what the mind refuses to acknowledge. You cannot mechanize intimacy. For men stuck in the cycle of conquest and regret, Jung would ask, where is your anima? Your inner feminine isn't some soft, passive force. She's a tempest. When you ignore her need for depth, meaning, and sacred connection, she sabotages you. She's the reason you feel dead inside after a one-night stand. She's the voice that whispers, this isn't you. The anima doesn't want more bodies. She wants rituals. She wants eye contact that lingers, touch that trembles with intention, sex that isn't an act of consumption but an offering. When you disrespect a woman by rushing intimacy, you're disrespecting your own anima, and she will retaliate through depression, rage, or a creeping sense of existential futility. Women, your animus is equally ruthless. He's not the patriarchal tyrant society warned you about. He's the part of you that craves sovereignty. When you sleep with men who haven't earned your trust, your animus doesn't judge you as slutty. He grieves. He sees you abandoning your throne to beg for scraps at a beggar's table. The animus demands boundaries not to punish you, but to protect you. He knows that every time you let a man cross a line without consequence, you're teaching him how to treat you, and you're teaching yourself how little you matter. Jung wrote that a woman's animus matures not through rebellion, but through discernment. It's not about playing hard to get, it's about being impossible to disrespect. Back to the pain, back to the loneliness. Jungian analyst Marie-Louise von Franz once said, "The greatest danger in solitude is that you might meet yourself." And that's exactly the point. When you stop using sex, relationships, or validation to mute your inner void, you begin the real work, the work of reparenting yourself. Every man who's ever felt used after a hookup is confronting his inner orphan, the boy who never learned to validate himself. Every woman who's ever cried after being ghosted is facing her inner exile. The girl who was taught her worth depends on being chosen. This is where Jung's individuation becomes actionable. Chapter 1. Sacred Rage. Stop spiritualizing passivity. That anger you feel, use it. Burn down the patterns that keep you small. 2. Shadow dialogues. Talk to your loneliness. Ask it, "What are you here to teach me?" 3. Anima Animus counsels. Write letters from your inner feminine masculine. Let them critique your choices. Here's the twist no one tells you. The more you tolerate loneliness, the less lonely you become. When you stop fearing solitude, you stop clinging to people who diminish you. You develop a gravitational pull, not because you're perfect, but because you're real. Jung wrote that the goal isn't to eradicate desire, but to elevate it. Lust transformed becomes passion. Infatuation refined becomes devotion. The man who's faced his negredo doesn't chase women. He attracts them by being fully alive in his purpose. The woman who's wrestled her animus doesn't seduce men. She magnetizes them by being unapologetically whole. Expect backlash, internally and externally. Your healed self will terrify your unhealed circles. Friends will call you too intense. Lovers will accuse you of overcomplicating things. Society will label you rigid or frigid. This isn't a sign you are wrong, it's proof you are right. Jung warned that individuation is a rebellion. You're rejecting the collective hypnosis of instant gratification. You're refusing to be a cog in the machine of transactional intimacy. And the machine will try to break you. It'll send you temptations. A text from an ex, a match with someone stunning but shallow, a night of wine-fueled what-ifs. Your job isn't to resist temptation, it's to see it for what it is, a test of your commitment to yourself. The most dangerous lie hookup culture tells? That great sex requires no context. Jung argued the opposite. True eroticism is the culmination of tension, curiosity, and earned vulnerability. The fire doesn't come from skin, it comes from soul. Think of the difference between a microwave meal and a slow-cooked feast. Both fill your stomach, but only one nourishes your cells. When you rush intimacy, you're feeding your hunger with junk food and wondering why you're still malnourished. The man who takes his time, who courts his own depth before courting a woman's body, isn't friend-zoned. He's cultivating soil for roots to grow. Jung's alchemical process ends with rubedo, the reddening. It's the stage where the pain transforms into wisdom, the loneliness into unshakable self-possession. You don't just get over your patterns, you transcend them. For men, this looks like sitting with your sexual urges instead of acting on them. It's realizing that every time you choose self-respect over easy validation, you're rewiring decades of conditioning. For women, this looks like letting men walk away when they demand more than you're willing to give. It's understanding that a man's departure isn't a reflection of your worth, but a revelation of his limitations. So I'll ask again, what if the pain isn't the enemy? What if every moment of loneliness, every pang of rejection, every silent night spent confronting your shadows is the exact training ground you need to become someone who can't be disrespected? Because you've learned to respect yourself. Jung's final word on the matter was simple. The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are, not who your parents wanted, not who society rewards, not who your trauma molded, who you are. This isn't a self-help script. This is a war cry. The battlefield is your soul, the weapons are your choices, the prize, a love that doesn't diminish you, a love that defines you. If this cuts through the noise, if it stirs something primal in you, act. Not tomorrow, not after one more scroll. Now, close this video, sit in silence. Ask yourself the question you've been avoiding. What am I using sex to escape from? The answer will hurt, and that's good. Hurt is the universe's way of saying, wake up, the real work has begun. Before you go, do this one thing. Take a moment right now to like this video, share it with another soul who needs to hear the truth, and subscribe for more. Your support isn't just for us, it's for the next people who are still living in the illusion, waiting to be set free. Help us spread this message. Help us wake up the world, one soul at a time.